Last night, I had one of those dreams that feels like it's trying to get your attention. Not necessarily with thunder and lightning, but something far stranger. In the dream, I was in one of those old drive-ins, the kind where people pull up and they bring you food. And just as I was getting ready to leave, there was a car blocking my way. I couldn't back out of the drive-in. And the only way out was to sort of move through a narrow exit with an awkward turn, the kind that would require a little bit of patience and precision. And so I eased the car forward and I bumped a few cars as I maneuvered through the tight space. And in a few moments, I'm getting out of the drive-in, but then I realized there's this pig sitting in the car with me. This creature appeared out of nowhere. It wasn't threatening me, it was just simply there. And somehow I knew I was supposed to take it with me.
Every so often, life speaks to us in a language older than words, a language made of images, symbols, and quiet inner movements. We call these dreams, but they are more than the flickering stories that pass through the night. They are part of the deep grammar of the soul, a way the inner elder communicates when our waking mind is too busy to listen. Dreams don't arrive to flatter us. They don't come to entertain. They come to reveal, and the stories they tell are not only about us, they belong to a universal field of human experience. They speak in metaphors that every culture, tradition, and person recognizes at some level. The journey, the companion, the obstacle, the unexpected visitor, the narrow passage, the call that comes before we feel ready. When we pay attention to these nighttime stories, we begin to notice that they are not random. They are invitations. They are teachings that mirror parts of our lives we might otherwise overlook.
In today's reflection, I want to share a dream, not as something that was unique to me, but as a story that I think belongs to all of us. My name is David Lowry, and this is the Inner Elder Reflections of What Life Teaches Us. And I want to tell you about a dream that I think applies to all of us if we allow the Inner Elder to speak. In the dream, I found myself standing in a wide valley with a trusted companion. It was a person who represents to me almost like a pastor, a person of wisdom and friendship and presence. And we were talking about something happening far away to the north in a place like Norway, very far away, a land with cold clarity, long distances. And I don't know what was happening there, but it seemed really important and like we needed to get there. We were being called to go. So my friend and I decided we needed to go, not later, but now. And not after gathering everything we thought we needed. We needed to go right now. I remember searching through my closet for my heavy coat and gloves. I knew I had them, but I just couldn't find them at the moment. Still, I felt the urgency of the call, and I said, look, we'll get all these things on the way. We don't have to have them now. And so we set out, trusting that we'd find what we needed along the way. Just before leaving, someone approached. And it was a man I sort of recognized, but something in me resisted because he didn't feel like he should be a part of this journey. And even though he was speaking to my companion, I knew, I don't think this guy should come along with us. I don't want this person to come along. Then the dream shifted. I was in one of those old type of drive-ins, the kind where people pull up and they bring you food. And just as I was getting ready to leave, there was a car blocking my way. I couldn't back out of the drive-in. And the only way out was to move through a narrow exit with an awkward turn, the kind that would require a little bit of patience and precision. So I eased the car forward and I bumped a few cars as I maneuvered through the tight space. It wasn't graceful, but it worked. And in a few moments, I'm getting out of the drive-in. But then I realized there's this pig sitting in the car with me. This creature appeared out of nowhere. It wasn't threatening me. It was just simply there. And somehow I knew I was supposed to take it with me.
There is a moment in every life when something calls to us from a distance, a responsibility, a truth, a shift, a new chapter. It rarely arrives with perfect timing. It rarely waits until we feel prepared. More often, it comes the way it did in the dream, suddenly, urgently, without giving us time to gather our coat and gloves. This leads us to Lesson 1. The call comes before we feel ready. David begins this lesson by telling a story about his sister.
It reminds me of when I got a call, and I was on a vacation of all things, and I was told that my sister needed to be admitted in an emergency way to a nursing home. There was no one else but me to help. In the dream, I knew what I owned. I just couldn't find it. And that's often how life works. We sense that there's some inner resources somewhere, the courage, the clarity, the wisdom, but they're not always neatly folded and ready at hand. And the call doesn't pause. It doesn't say, take your time, gather everything and begin. It just simply says, you need to do something. You need to go. So I'm thinking about my sister and needing to make arrangements. I was in a different country, having to get her admitted into a nursing home and make the process to become her guardian and her financial manager and her medical advisor. Maybe you've had things like this. If you think back, maybe it's the first time you held your newborn child, or maybe a grandchild or a niece or a nephew. And no matter how many books you've read or how many people you've talked to, suddenly you're not prepared for what's coming ahead. And yet there you are, holding the life that needed you, learning as you go, and discovering that love is going to teach you a lot of things you don't know yet. And that's how many of life's callings arrive. We're not ready, but with responsibility. I think the dream gives us a universal truth. We're almost never fully prepared for the journeys that matter the most, the great movements of our lives, such as healing and forgiveness, our vocation and transformation. They don't wait until we feel ready. They begin the moment we say yes. And sometimes they begin even if you don't say yes. They begin when we trust that what we lack is going to be provided along the way. They begin when you stop waiting for perfect conditions and start moving with whatever it is you have. In the dream, the decision wasn't based on readiness. It was based on calling. And somehow I think that changes everything, because sometimes being ready is a feeling, right? But calling is a summons. It's like, we need you now. So the question becomes, where is life calling you before you feel prepared? And where is that inner elder in you whispering that it's time for you to begin now? And just trust that you'll find what you need on the road. So that's the first lesson of the dream. Movement is often the door to provision. Courage is a coat we discover only if we're willing to step into the cold.
Lesson 1 reminds us that the journey often begins before we feel equipped, and that the call itself is part of our preparation. But every journey also raises another question, one that shapes the path just as much as the destination. Who or what is meant to travel with us? And just as importantly, who or what is not? In Lesson 2, Discernment of Companions, David will discuss the quiet art of discernment, how we recognize the companions, patterns, and inner voices that belong on the road ahead, and how we gently release the ones that do not.
Every journey asks something of us. But before it asks for endurance or clarity or courage, it will ask for something quieter and more difficult. It will ask for discernment. In the dream, just as I was being prepared to leave, a man approaches, and he's eager and talkative, and he wants to join the journey. Nothing about him is threatening, but something in me knew, he shouldn't come on this journey with me. It wasn't judgment, it wasn't rejection, it was recognition. The inner elder inside of you whispers many times, this is not your companion for the road ahead. I think we all know the experience. There are people, roles, habits, even old versions of ourselves that try to follow us into new chapters of life. Not because they're malicious, but because they're familiar. They've been a part of our story. They assume they belong in the next chapter as well. But not everything that has walked with us is meant to keep walking with us. It reminds me of something many of us have lived through. Think about a moment when you pack up a home you've lived in for years and you sort through all the boxes and you find things you once treasured. Maybe it's clothes that no longer fit, or keepsakes, or books you've outgrown. There's nothing wrong with them, but deep down you know they don't belong in the next place, and you're going to have to get rid of them because they'll only weigh you down. My wife and I downsized our home, and so many of the things that I had kept over the years, it's got to go. Discernment is like that. It's the quiet wisdom that says, this belongs with me, but this doesn't. It's the courage to bless what's been a part of your life without insisting that it has to be a part of your future. In the dream, there was a man who wanted to join us, and the temptation is to always bring those things along, even if they no longer serve us. It could be an old fear, an old identity, an old expectation, an obligation, even old versions of faith or leadership or selfhood that once fit you really well, but don't fit you any longer. The inner elder knows the truth. Every new chapter requires a new traveling party. Some of your companions are chosen, others have to be released. The question becomes, who or what is trying to come with you that doesn't belong on the road ahead? What patterns, roles, or relationships are you being invited to bless and release? You see, discernment is not about exclusion. It's about alignment. It's about choosing the companions that will help you walk into the next chapter of life, calling you right now.
Lesson 2 invites us into the gentle art of discernment, recognizing what belongs with us and what does not. But even when we choose our companions wisely, the path itself can still narrow. Movement forward often requires navigating tight spaces, awkward turns, and imperfect steps. In this next section, David will explore what it means to move through life's narrow passages, the moments when progress is possible, but not graceful, and when the only way out is forward.
I think there's a third lesson here about navigating life's narrow passages. Even when we answer the call and choose our companions wisely, the path forward is not always wide or easy, and sometimes life brings us into a place like the drive-in in my dream, a place where movement is almost impossible, but you can make it by moving forward through a narrow, awkward passage. It's like being born into a new world. In the dream, I was ready to leave, ready to move forward, but there was a car behind me that blocked the way, so I can't go back to my past, right? It had been sitting there for a long time, unmoving. The only exit was a tight turn that required patience and precision and a willingness to bump into a few things on the way out. I think that's how many transitions feel. Not dramatic, not catastrophic, but just tight and a bit uncomfortable. A season where the space to maneuver is limited, where the margin for error feels small, and the only way out is to move forward, even if it isn't graceful. We all know this experience. Think about a time that you tried to move a large piece of furniture through a hallway, maybe a couch or something like that, and you angle it one way and then another, and you bump a wall or scrape a corner. But eventually, with enough small adjustments, you get it through. Not because the path was wide, but because you kept moving. And life's narrow passages work a lot the same way. They require humility, they require patience, they require the courage to move even when the movement is imperfect. In the dream, I bumped a few cars as I made my way out. And that's an honest picture of how growth often looks. You don't glide through your transitions. You're going to brush up against your old patterns and ways of thinking and doing things. And sometimes we nudge up against other people's expectations of what we should be doing. We make the small mistakes. But the important thing is that we keep going and try to move forward. The inner elder knows that progress is often awkward before it becomes graceful. Sometimes the only way to create space is to move through the space that feels too small. So the question becomes, where in your life are you being asked to move forward, even if the movement isn't elegant? Where is the path narrow but passable? Where is life whispering, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to move forward? I think that's the third lesson of the dream, that the narrow places are not signs that you should turn back. They're invitations to trust that you can navigate more than you think.
Lesson 3 reminds us that the path forward is not always wide, and that imperfect movement is still movement. But the dream offers one more teaching, one that arrives in the form of an unexpected companion. Sometimes, as we navigate the tight spaces of life, something surprising appears beside us. Something earthy, instinctual, or unpolished. Something we didn't plan to carry, but that insists on coming along. In this next section, David will explore what it means to welcome the unexpected parts of ourselves, the ones that show up uninvited, yet somehow belong to the journey ahead.
Here's lesson 4. Move forward and bring the pig. By the time we reach the final scene of the dream, something unexpected has happened. I'm navigating the narrow exit, bumping into the cars, doing my best to move forward, and suddenly there's a pig in the car with me. Not a symbolic, polished storybook pig, a real one, earthy, unapologetic, entirely itself. And somehow, I'm expected or supposed to take it with me. If the early parts of the dream were about calling, discernment, and courage, this part is about something far more human and far more humorous because all of us have a pig. It's a part of ourselves that feels a bit unrefined, unfinished, embarrassing, or inconvenient. It's the part we'd rather hide when we're trying to look spiritual or wise or all put together. But the dream doesn't say, get rid of the pig. It just says, make room for it. The pig is coming with you. Whatever your pigs are, they come with you. We all know this experience. Think about the last time you tried to present your best self at work, or a relationship, or a moment that mattered, and right on cue, your pig showed up. Maybe it was your impatience, or an old insecurity, or a bit of awkwardness. Maybe it was an anxiety, or a wound, or your quirky humor that no one understands. Maybe it's your tendency to overthink or underprepare or those perfectionistic tendencies that you have. Whatever the pig is, it has a way of climbing into the car at the most inconvenient time. But here's the truth the inner elder wants us to hear. Your pig isn't the problem. It's your shame about the pig that's the problem. The pig represents the earthy, honest, unpolished parts of your humanity. The parts that remind us that we're not finished yet. We are works in progress. We are clay still being shaped. We're people who bump into things on the way out of the drive-in. The pig is the part of you that refuses to be left behind because it actually belongs to your wholeness. The dream is saying, move forward and bring the pig. Bring your humanity. Bring your imperfections. Bring the parts of you that you're tempted to hide. They're not obstacles to your journey. They're your companions on it. And even if you wanted to, you can't get rid of the pigs. So the question becomes, what's the pig in your life? The earthy, unpolished part of you that needs to be honored rather than exiled. What would it mean to stop trying to get rid of it, but maybe make space for it in the passenger seat? I think that's the fourth lesson of the dream. Wholeness isn't achieved by discarding the messy parts of ourselves. It's achieved by accepting and integrating them with humor, humility, and grace.
Lesson 4 invites us to embrace the earthy, imperfect parts of ourselves, the ones that insist on coming along whether we approve or not. Together, these 4 lessons form a single movement, a call to trust the journey, choose our companions wisely, navigate the narrow places with courage, and welcome the unexpected parts of ourselves with compassion. In this final section, David will offer a closing reflection for all of us who are learning to move forward with our calling, our courage, and yes, our pig.
As we come to the end of this reflection, I want to return to the simple truth that sits beneath the dream. Life is always speaking to us, sometimes through circumstances, sometimes through relationships, and sometimes when we're quiet enough or tired enough or open enough through dreams. Dreams are the oldest language of the soul. They don't speak in paragraphs, they speak in symbols and images. They speak in movements that bypass our defenses and go straight to the deepest spaces within us. This dream, with its distant call, its missing code, its unexpected companion, a narrow passage, and an unapologetic pig, it isn't just my dream. It's a dream that belongs to all of us because all of us knows what it's like to be summoned before we're ready. All of us knows what it means to choose companions wisely. We all have to navigate tight spaces where progress is possible, and all of us carry a pig, that earthly, honest part of ourselves that refuses to be left behind. The inner elder, that wise, steady presence within each of us, is always inviting us to listen, to pay attention, to notice the symbols that rise in the night and the truths that surface in the quiet moments of our day. It speaks in dreams not to confuse us, but to guide us, not to shame us, but to deepen us, not to burden us, but to remind us that we are more whole, more capable, and more accompanied than we realize. So as you move back into your life, listen for that voice. Notice what calls to you. Notice what no longer belongs. Notice the narrow places that ask for courage. And notice the pig, the part of you that is earthly, imperfect, but entirely worthy of being carried forward. May you trust the journey. May you welcome your companions. May you navigate the tight spaces with grace. And may you bring your whole self, even the pig, into the life that's calling you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Inner Elder, Reflections on What Life Teaches Us. If this reflection spoke to you, we invite you to like, subscribe, and share the podcast with someone who might need its wisdom today. Until next time, may your week be filled with clarity, courage, and the quiet guidance of your own inner elder. And may good things find you on the road ahead.